Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Doris and I'm with Little Bird Products. Today I thought I would try something different and do what's called a vlog, a video log. And I wanted to talk about, for a lot of us, we're making things to sell, not just for ourselves, but also for others that enjoy it and would like to purchase it. So I thought I would talk a little bit about the places that I have sold things and I continue to sell things, and maybe things that you might want to think about if you're going to sell things. So when I started out, I wasn't sure exactly how I wanted to sell my altered couture, but I had sold things, clothing of my own or clothing that I had thrifted, and a lot of those things I sold on eBay. Some I sold and on Poshmark. I've also purchased in both those venues. I also sell those same things on Facebook Marketplace. And then I happened to find out about Etsy. And having had a software background, I was familiar with websites, and I was thinking about actually creating my own website. So I have some thoughts on how to do that and how those things are done. But what I had settled on as my first venue of selling was at craft shows. And that happened because I met a lady via Etsy, and I'd also already set up my Etsy shop. I didn't have much in it. She was looking for somebody to partner with her at her craft shows that she did. Oh, it's a really nice craft show. It's one that's still existing. It's the oldest all handmade craft show in the Houston area, and it's called the Velvet Stocking. And I'll put a link to that in their Facebook page. They're very unique in that the vendors run the show. It's not run by a church or run by anybody else. And they do, their normal venue is in the Civic Center at League City. So that's how I got started. And what I'm going to talk about today is what I've learned about craft shows. So for those of you that are interested in doing that, you'll probably be interested in this video, and others you might just be curious and want to whip through it so you can find out what I've been doing along the way. There's some basic background that you need to know if you're going to sell at craft shows. There are different types of craft shows. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to talk more specifically about the craft shows that I have done and I've done repeatedly, and what I like about them or what I don't like about them. And these are just my opinions. It might be different for different vendors, and depending on what you sell and what your price point is, your experience might be a little different. I started out just selling handmade pillows and aprons and a little bit of altered couture in there, in the sense that it applied to making vintage linens into wearable pieces. And starting out, I did mainly aprons because that was what the lady that I shared the booth with did. And I would recommend that if you're just starting out with craft shows and you have somebody that's an experienced craft show seller and they are willing to share a little piece of their booth with you, that's what I happen to do with my sewing protege who helps me now with my craft shows, is I give her a little bit of space. I take all the money for her, and then I keep track of what's her sales and what's my sales, and then I split that with her at the end. That works out pretty well because she doesn't have to know anything about taking money. She doesn't have to set up a Square account or get a card reader or any of those kind of things. She doesn't even have to have a sales tax ID yet. After this year, this will be her second year. She's only done a few craft shows with me. She will want to do all of those things. And I recommend that you do that as well, that's some of the groundwork you need to lay. I also have helped her set up her Etsy shop, and I'll do a different vlog on Etsy and what my experiences are there. So those are the two main ways that I sell what I make. And I am going to show you some pictures of what my load up looks like in my van, because I do use my Honda minivan to load all of my things up. I've learned a little bit over the years too about what works for me. What works for me might not work for you, but what I found, especially in the last couple of years, when mostly I'm setting up by myself, that I have to find easy ways to set up and to transport my things. So there's also some things that you're going to want to think about purchasing and doing. And what I'll also do is I'll attach in the description the links to some of the shows. Also, there's a publication that I would recommend that you invest in. It's a craft show, fairs and festivals, and I'll put the link in there for that. There's part of it that you can see and read for free, and then if you subscribe to their publication, you'll get all the background information. There's also a Facebook group that I belong to that talk about craft shows. It's kind of like the good, the bad, and the ugly, and what they experience. And like I said, your experience with a craft show, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt, just like anything. When somebody tells you something, that's their experience. It may not be yours. The craft shows that I continue to do on a repeated basis, they're ones where I feel that the booth fee is relatively reasonable. And reasonable is different for everybody, depending on what your price point is and what you sell. Reasonable for me might be $400 for a 2-day 10 by 10 booth. And that might just be totally too much for what you sell. Maybe you want to choose to do a farmer's market every Saturday and it costs you $20 for your booth. I don't do outdoor shows because I don't think it's a good thing to have my textiles out there exposed to the sun and potentially the rain and the dirt. I have done some in the past. I've done them in dirt-packed arenas. That, like I said, that's okay for some people. It's not for me. It just doesn't work. I have done it in the past. Won't do that again. Or I say that, but, I've done some of those a couple of times before I learned my lesson. I do shows every now and then in a fair kind of area, but it's always where there's a cement floor and there's some kind of covering and there's protection from the weather. I don't do those often. I enjoy doing them. It's a different kind of crowd. That's the other thing that you need to think about is who is your customer? Are they older, retired people? Are they young children? Are they grandmas? Are they moms? Are they the young crowd, the young set? So that will make a difference. I mean, I wouldn't think of doing a Comic-Con because that doesn't work for me. And that's not who my target customer is, but it might work for you. So you need to investigate those things. Some of the basic things that you need to know in terms of, getting a way to take money, having that set up, I recommend that you have a separate savings account. You don't have to have a checking account. I recommend a savings account, tied to your bank. It can be tied to your regular bank account. And that you also have a separate credit card that you use, to make payments. And also when you purchase things, it's much easier to do your bookkeeping at the end of the year if you keep those separate. And if you do think about setting up an Etsy shop, those two things are really required. They don't cost you anything. They're just something that you'll have to figure out how to jump through the hoops and do that. But at the end of the year, you'll thank me because you can see exactly what you've spent and you can see exactly what your revenue has been. I have a list here of things I don't want to forget. I wanted to talk a little bit about the types of craft shows there are. The way I categorize them is, I talked a little bit about the farmer's market kind of things. Then they have little pop-ups, might be in a grocery store parking lot, or it might be outside a boutique, or maybe a room in a boutique. So there's little pop-ups like that are kind of independent, and they don't normally cost a lot to do that. That's a good way to get your feet wet. You will learn some lessons about that. Normally there are little one-day things in there for a few hours, and that might work for you. Like if you make fudge or candy, or you make little stuffies, or, you make dog collars, there's some of those kind of things that you can do, and they're not very expensive, and it's a good way to start out because all of the basics are the same. You've got to, pay your fees. You've got to be able to take money. You have to work with some kind of a sponsor, someone who's setting up, the venue. You have to, by the way, you have to do your homework on that because you'll want to make sure they're credible people, because there are so many stinkers out there today who have scams, and they'll take your money and you'll get nothing for it. So you need to have somebody reputable, and do your homework. Find out, talk to somebody, another vendor who's done it before, and listen to what they say. The other kind of show that I continue to do, and I will probably do for a few more years yet, I always say I'm going to only do craft shows for another 3 years, and I've been saying that for 6 or 7 years now. But I am only going to do them for another 3 years. I don't want to be doing craft shows when I'm 80, but I might. I like church craft shows. You have to be careful with those too. All the craft shows I do. I like them. I enjoy meeting people. You finally get to meet your customers face to face. It's so nice. It's as personal as I want to get with my customers. I wouldn't want to do any kind of a venue where people came to my house. I don't feel that that's safe. That might be something that you want to do. I mean, if you're used to that and you want to sell on Facebook Marketplace and that's your target customer, I would just say be careful and be safe. Other craft shows, I have done some very large craft shows. I mean, large for me. I've done probably the largest show in terms of money, time, and those kind of things is that I have another vendor friend. She's an author of the Tooth Collector Fairy series, and she also makes little toothy pillows, so she has a craft along with her writing and her books. I did a big dental show in Atlanta, Georgia a few years ago with her. She did very well. I did okay. It was very expensive. It was in a very large venue, a big, very large conference hall, where there were a lot of rules about when you could set up, how you could set up, what you could do, what you could not do, all of those kind of things. Be ready and prepared for the rules and respect, the conference promoters. They do a lot of advertising, and it is usually a very expensive event. I wouldn't recommend you do those the first few years. It's good to set a target market. Another very large one that I did was a Fair of the Hearts in Oklahoma. I loved it. I did really well at that show. It was at a big fairgrounds, a lot of buildings full of crafters, and it was a wonderful show, and I absolutely loved it. It is now, it used to be an independent promoter that did a lot of good for charities around. I have since heard that it's under a different organization now, so I don't want to speak to that. I have done vintage market days events, and they're all over the United States. And by the way, I am speaking specifically to craft shows in the United States, but most of them are all across the country, as you'll find out. And I'll link links to these that I do so that you can look out for yourself and do some research. I do like vintage market days, but you have to be careful with those because a lot of them are at fairgrounds. Those are some of the ones that I did in the Dirt Packed Arena. But they also have ones that are in a shelter. Usually at a fairgrounds, there's some kind of a venue that has a cement floor and it has a covering. And that's not too bad. I mean, except the heat of the summer in Texas, I wouldn't do it. And that's another thing, seasonality. I have found over the years that the craft shows that always in the fall, that's the big season, starting in September and then running through the very beginning, the first week in December. Those are the most profitable shows. Some products and some vendors have luck, and they do venues all year round. You will find that spring craft shows, except right around Mother's Day, Easter, those are pretty good times. The rest of the time, unless you're doing something that's a themed event, like I mentioned Comic-Con, something like that, if that's your kind of venue, you'll want to be careful about doing those and just go in with your eyes open and your expectations set. I do like the churches. I have several churches that have, they have large congregations who support their efforts. And those are really nice. I like the ladies there. Again, those aren't professionally run. They're run usually, usually by the church themselves. So your expectations of what they're going to do for you and what you need to do should be a little different. They're all really friendly, and the ladies work really hard to make the event special. But the rules are a little different. And then there's the organized shows from promoters. You need to be careful about those and do your research. I would recommend that if you're going to do a new show, that you go and visit it first. Maybe the venue or the promoter has shows all year round. That's good because it's easy to go and see what they're like and what their setup is like. You won't know about the exact show unless you talk to the other vendors. And if you're nice, most of the vendors are willing to help out somebody that's new, so you can walk around and ask questions. You won't want to ask questions of somebody that's a competitor that make the exact same thing that you do. But, if you crochet animals and there's somebody else that crochets aprons or crochets something else, you should talk to them about how they do it, how they're doing, not exactly how much money they make, but, is this a good vendor and what's the promoter like? So you can find out a lot of the answers to those questions, online, on Facebook. I do a lot of shows locally that are through an organization that's called Home for the Holidays. The promoter with that, she's been around for a number of years. They are very good to their vendors. They have people there that for tips, they'll help you carry your stuff in. They help you set up. That's wonderful. It's wonderful for me because for a tip of $20 or $30, that's what I choose to give them because, I have a lot of load to carry in and I'm picky. So I need to tip them for what a picky old lady requires. And those are really nice. And she always does a lot of advertising. You're going to make sure that you know where they advertise. And then she's pretty good in being able to tell you what the average attendance is. And she's also pretty good about not putting you right next to somebody that sells the same thing that you do. So she does a good job of that. I will put the link to her sign up for there. And as I said, I will also put a link to Vintage Market Days. My local one is under a new organizer, but around the country they have a lot of different ones. So wherever your location is, the person that's responsible for setting it up has a franchise for that Vintage Market Days, and they're the ones that you'll be working with. But then again, you should attend that show that you think you're going to do next year, attend it this year. And that is another thing to remember, that normally, the larger shows, you're going to need to get your application in. They will vet you and then you will be accepted, and you'll normally end up paying your fee for the show, either part of it or all of it. It could be as much as a year ahead in order to secure your space. Some shows get sold out early. Some, will have latecomers or have spaces open up the last minute. And if you're not picky and you want to take a space at the last minute because you have an opening in your schedule, you can work with the promoter and do that. Also, there's another promoter in my area who is a realtor, and she's been doing craft shows for a number of years. I like her craft shows. She does a pretty good job of advertising, and people know where she has her show set up. Ladies organizations, there's a lot of junior leagues and things, and they do a pretty good job. The junior leagues are relatively expensive, and they're pretty picky about the vendors that they take in. But if you want to do that kind of a show, there again, like I said, attend ahead of time, do your homework, talk to other vendors. They're nice in terms of the type of clientele that you get, the type of customers you'll see. So that's another type of show you could do. There's also, in a lot of areas, and in our area, there's some community groups that'll have a pop-up market or a 2-day market in their community room for their group of homes, and you'll find that advertised, and that's locally. And if it's a fairly well-to-do area, you could do really well at those kind of shows. And most of them are small, relatively small, and they don't do a lot of advertising, but you'll get people who live in that community that want to support those kind of kinds of events. And a lot of times they'll have something where they'll contribute the booth fees that you pay to some kind of a charitable organization. So I think I've done enough blathering about the types of shows. I'm also going to develop a checklist that I will put it as part of the description for the things that you need to do and the things you need to get, like getting your state tax ID. Most states have state sales tax, and you'll be required to collect sales tax. I use a Square Reader. I had used PayPal for a number of years. You will want to use something like that to take credit cards. You will not want to use Venmo or some kind of a cash app. That's not really pretty kosher, and you can get scammed pretty easy that way. So I would recommend a Square Reader so you can take credit cards. Yes, of course, you can take cash. What I try to do is round everything to a whole dollar, and that way you don't have to take change. I hate taking change, so I round everything either up or down, and I let people know that if they're paying cash. And that usually is not a problem for people because they don't want change any more than you do, most people. You will need to have a way to do your setup, and I would recommend you experiment with that. Start out small. Maybe you just start out at a table. Some venues, they'll rent you a table for $10 or $20 or whatever. Go to Hobby Lobby or Costco or someplace else if you need little shelves. You'll have a lot of things that you'll need to do to set your setup. A normal booth size is usually a small one is 10 by 10. It can be 8 by 8, and you pay by the size of your booth. So you'll need to think about that. And some shows require a certain kind of setup. Some of them require white tablecloth. You'll be doing research and you'll see all of that and you'll know what you need. You want to look professional. You will want to get business cards, even if they're ones that you just print out yourself, and use a word processor and do something cutesy, and so that you can hand it out to somebody so that they know how to get a hold of you. If they want to buy something later or they want to know what shows you're going to be at. I would recommend that you have a Facebook page or some kind of a social media presence because you're going to want to advertise yourself and tell people where you're going to be. You don't have to spend a lot of money to get set up, but again, I said, you'll want to have a savings account and a credit card that you use just for your business. That'll help you out at the end of the year. And you do need to keep track of what you sell because unless you're selling stuff where you're spending as much as what you're making, then you'll be classified normally by the IRS as a craft business and you won't be able to write anything off, and then they don't want to know. It's like they don't want to know how much you made because you didn't make enough to pay federal income tax on it. But I think all of us if you want to do some selling and you want to do some selling on Etsy and other venues, you want to make some money. So I would recommend that you keep track of that, and then you can talk to your accountant about all of those things. I'm not here to act as your CPA, but I'm just telling you that's stuff that you probably will want to do. You will need to think about how you're going to pack things, what kind of a vehicle you're going to use. Do you have a van you can use? It'll all fit in your car. Are you going to need some help to set up? Are you going to pay somebody? Does the venue have people that work on tips? Normally, the setup for a show, unless it's just a small pop-up that's a few hours, if it's a one-day show, it's really nice if they let you set up the day before. Normally, there's security for your stuff. And then if it's a one-day show, you'll normally be there till 4:30, 5 o'clock, sometimes 6 o'clock. And then you have to tear your stuff down, pack it up, and take it home. So you'll want to think about that. I'm thinking of my little thing. Oh, you want to have bags of some kind. You can even just get little paper bags with a handle right at first. You can put stickers on it, staple up a piece of your business card and have something you put in it. Maybe it's your list of shows you're going to do, or a little bit familiar, a little thing that's a write-up about what you do and how you do it and what's special about what you make. That's nice. You can stick that in every little bag. And hopefully you have lots of sales and you have lots of little bags there. But you'll need to have something for the customer to take away. And like I said, I like I think a business card is important and it's essential, but it can be just printed out on paper and you can just cut them out and just do something that's memorable and kind of cute. You'll want to name your business. I mean, it can even be like your name, like Doris Ann's Crafts or something. I chose Little Bird Products, and there's a reason behind that, and you can find that out on my Etsy site. Let's see, square reader bags, business cards, description, pack up. Oh, I think that's pretty much. Oh, in terms of how much you pay for a show, you need to think about your budget. Festivals, venues like that, things that are multiple days, normally cost quite a bit more. And junior leagues, they'll cost you maybe $1,500 or $1,800. And you'll go, oh, holy crap, I'm not doing that. But, you know, at some point in time, if you really want it to be a business, that might be your aspiration. That 3 years down the road, you want to be able to do a junior league to say that you did it. Or you wanted to do a Comic-Con, and that's what you want to do. For me, a normal one-day show can be up to $400. I can fit in a 10 by 10 booth. I love having a 10 by 20 if it's not expensive, but normally 10 by 20 is almost twice what a 10 by 10 is. And I don't usually spend that much on a show. When I do a multi-day show, the most I do for days is a 3-day show. And a 3-day show can be $500 to $700, you know, around here, and for the ones that I do. So you'll want to, in order to not have sticker shock, that's why you'll want to go to the venue, talk to the vendors. Not all of them will tell you what they paid for a booth, but the promoter will tell you normally what they charge for a booth. That'll all be in a contract that you sign. Expect to sign a contract. If you're at an outdoor show, a lot of them are rain or shine. So if you don't want to do it because it's raining, that's fine, but don't expect to get your booth fee back. You know, unless there's a hurricane, tornado forecasted and something else, then, you know, they have to make their money too. So they have to protect themselves. I think that's everything that I have to say about background and about the craft shows. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if I can get it all together, do a video where I show you my van all loaded up, and I'll show you what my product looks like before it goes in the van, you know, because I do have ways that I package and store it. My book pocket pillows I put in blue zip bags. They work for me. You know, you can get them on Amazon. But now the garment bags that I put all my clothes in, I made those years ago, and they're a perfect way for me to transport my clothes. It keeps them clean, and it keeps them clean because I store my things not only in my closet but also in my garage. I also have some rolling racks that I use. I've tried different ones over the years, and I found that these work for me. If you want more information on that, I can put that in the description too. I also have a dolly, because all except for the Home for the Holiday shows, I have to load things in myself, and I want to make life easy on me. And I use grid walls now. I only use 4 grid walls, and it's just to hang my pillows. And I'm thinking about trying to find a way to display those without having to cart around the heavy grid walls. But there's only 4 of them, and, you know, 2 at a time I can lift. I don't carry them in. I put them as the base on my dolly. I've got a really nice dolly that was not cheap. It was expensive, but I use it all the time. It does take up a little room in the van, but I have a scientific way of how I pack things. I put my grid walls in, you know, and I have a rolling rack that cost me a lot. I actually did a little shopping. I call that dumpster diving, I think. With my son-in-law, he found these being put in the trash, and they're very expensive, and they're really nice, and I got 5 of them, and I sold half of them, and that, you know, funded my trip to the Mexican restaurant afterwards. So I have one of those, and I roll that up and compact. So if you're interested in the links to any of that, all that stuff can be purchased at sourcesupply.com, and they ship it to you. And I have mannequins. This one in the back I use for taking my pictures on. And also because it's pinnable, I can use it as a pinnable mannequin, a mock-up. But I have some inexpensive wire mannequins. It takes a lot to ruin them. And because you pack everything in the van and it's going to be tight, I want things that will survive. So I use those to display my clothes. So I have a certain way that I set up. And I have normally I've worked out, what works for me now. You'll see quite a few pictures of my setups that I have just to give you some ideas of how I display my things. I'm using fewer and fewer grid walls now. Some venues require grid walls. There's the Peddler Shows, which are a little expensive, and I've stopped doing those. They require that you set your booth up looking like its own individual little boutique. They require that you have curtains around the side of it. So like I said, be prepared for some requirements and do your research ahead of time. So that's my setup. I do have some other pictures, and you'll see the booth that my tooth collector fairy friend, how she sets hers up. Hers is a little different because of what she sells and how she sells it. Just like, yours might be different. Like I said, maybe you only require one little table, and maybe there's a table booth. That's a very inexpensive booth normally that you can get. I also have a thing for, how I dress professionally for my shows. If we watch my other video in my little chicken outfit and bloomers, I do wear that to the shows. And also, like today, I'm wearing something I made. I try to show off, what I've made. And having a little personality helps because you want people to remember you because you want them to ask, is Little Bird going to be at the show? Or is the pocket pillow lady going to be here? Early on, I was known as the apron lady. So, you'll develop a following based on that. And that's helped me with my Etsy store because when I'm not doing shows, I do make sales on Etsy through the spring and summer. And that's really nice because that helps me continue to be able to fund my little hobby business. So if you have any questions at the end, feel free to comment. I'm going to go through the films that show you some of my crafting buddies. It helps to have help. And you'll see some of the people that help me a lot. And you'll see all of my setups. And you will see my van, what it looks like loaded. And that's what it looks like going there. And I swear, things get bigger when you take them out. Because you would think I'd have half as much when I come back from a show. That's what I do when I go to the show. And I can tell you, it's kind of like eating Chinese food. The more you eat, the more you got. So that's what it looks like when you set up, load in, and when you load out. Thanks for watching.